Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Crime Time with Dr. Debbie. I'm your host, Dr. Debbie Goodman, and we're delighted to offer show number 1 at St. Thomas University. The nature and purpose of the show is to have our viewers learn from, listen to, engage with professionals in the field of criminal justice, many of whom will have contributed greatly in their capacities as law enforcement representatives, attorneys, agents, detectives, investigators, so that all of you, our students, can learn best practices from them. And today I'm very honored and privileged to have 2 outstanding members of our criminal justice community, to include Chief Tim Belcher and Major Anna Cardona. Hello,
Good afternoon,
welcome.
everyone.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you both for taking time and talking to our students who will be our next generation of leaders. And it would be
That's great.
great if we could start with maybe a little background and understanding for them as to how each of you started your careers. So Chief, may we start with you?
Yes. So when I started my career, before I started my career, and this is what made me want to be a police officer. As a young man in my community, I was seeing a lot of things between law enforcement and my community that I wanted to change, that I see needed change, and that was that relationship between my community and the police department and stuff. So once I got old enough, I always kept my mind and my heart on being a police officer if I didn't go to the NFL. So I always tell people, you see where I ended up at, being a law enforcement officer. I did that for 30 years and ended up retiring as assistant chief. And now I have the opportunity to be here at St. Thomas University as the director of public safety. But the opportunity that I received from the police department once I became a police officer, it's tremendous. When you talk about the benefits, you talk about the friendships, you talk about the camaraderie that you have with other law enforcement officers are great. And then just reaching out to the community was a big thing of mine as far as, lifting up those young people to be successful in life, which made me feel real great becoming a police officer. And that was one of the greatest days of my life, walking across that stage after going through the academy for those 6 months. And then coming out with that uniform and getting into the old box Crown Victoria police car and smelling that leather seats. So that was a great feeling for me because it was something that I always wanted to do in life, to become that police officer, and just to get that accomplishment and accomplish that effort or that goal and stuff was very exciting for me. And then it was to move on to the next. So nowadays I tell young people not make 1 or 2 goals, you make your 5 or 6, because once you get over the 1 or 2, you're going to want to go higher. You're going to want more. So that's one thing that I looked at once I got onto the police department out of the academy. I became part of the SWAT team. I became one of the honor guard members and actually became the leader of the honor guard member. And then I wanted to get promoted. And I ended up doing that and moved up the ladder there as far as getting promoted. And then I think I joined a couple other things as a mentor, whether it was in the school for the city or with the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence and stuff. So I joined all those organizations because I enjoyed, mentoring young people. And then in 1996, me and another friend of mine that was on the police force, we started the Police Athletic League in North Miami, which was very terrific, as far as the kids, and successful because now it has grown today to where they have moved around in different buildings in the city. And we have different kids that have come through there and enjoyed the program, and also successfully graduated from high school, which was great.
Wow, Chief, that is awesome. I want to thank you for your service, sir. Truly, that is wonderful. And Major Cardona, we would love to hear about your background.
So I think you're going to find very similar threads, regardless of who you speak to in law enforcement, whether they're an attorney or what have you. But you always want to give back to your community. And that was one of the things I've always wanted to help someone, help a person, a dog, an injured dog. I've always wanted to help. And that's what got me into law enforcement. When I was younger, I experienced domestic violence. At the time, I didn't know what domestic violence was. But when I got into police work, I learned it very quickly. And I found myself at a very young age, I was 19 when I got hired, helping other people who were experiencing this domestic violence in their 40s and 50s.
Wow.
So it was almost like full circle. And then I too, became an officer and you love working, at least I loved working the road. I grew up in that community, so it was a way for me to truly give of myself to where I grew up. I went to school, St. James. I graduated from North Miami Senior High. So everything was, I was part of that community, and I wanted it to grow and to become better than what it was. As I started to move up the ladder, I became a detective, and my expertise, my love was exactly that: domestic violence, child abuse, sexual abuse, elderly abuse. I believe I thrived in that area because it was truly a means for me to give back and to really try and help those that at the time, they didn't really have a voice.
Yeah.
That domestic violence cycle is very difficult to get out of.
Sure.
And then I studied to become a sergeant, and then moved from there. From a sergeant, quickly became a commander and then a major. And I loved that role because it was also an opportunity to mentor and help the upcoming officers grow and learn about themselves, and to try and stay true to who they were. And not only that, understanding the community, because the community was changing.
Yes.
So you, especially in an administrative position, have to change your personnel to reflect that of the community. So that way we have a better understanding of cultures and different upbringings, just things that are completely different.
Yes.
You know, foods and understanding, you know, people would call in about complaining of smells. Okay, well, and you had to teach, you had to like educate people that you were responding to help them understand their neighbor. Because we lost a lot of that. But as when I was growing up, it took a village, right, to raise a child. And your neighbor was quick to reprimand you if you were doing something wrong, and making sure that they notified your parent.
Yes.
Well, we lost a lot of that. And people, they want to look the other way. So we have to educate them and kind of teach them, no, we can't afford to look the other way. We need you.
Absolutely.
As law enforcement officers, we need you. You are our eyes and ears. And that was also a way, a bridge, right, to forge that communication between public and our community, and even stakeholders within the community.
Sure.
And that was very, very rewarding for me.
Absolutely.
It was truly a humbling career, and I loved every moment of it.
Wow. Well, excellent. I'm sorry to reach over, Chief, but I gotta give a handshake to Major Cardona, and certainly to our students, to recognize and realize the levels of talent, skill, and ability that it will take to be effective law enforcement professionals. And thank you both so much. And so now, may we share some of the impact. Obviously, today, as we're filming, having this conversation, it is the 23rd anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
And I just had conversations with my students who weren't born yet, but still with the remembrance, recognition, respect of what this day represents. But could each of you share either where were you when you first heard of it, or what you think about it, and are we safer today, 23 years later, than we were?
Well, I was at work that day, and I was at a different department, and I believe I was in that department's lunchroom when it flashed up on TV when I saw the first tower get hit. You know, how that impacted me, it was devastating because the amount of people that you know that was inside that building, whether it was the first building or the second building. But just being up there, you're at work, you plan on coming to work that day, you're at work, not expecting for unknown to crash into your building, and all of a sudden life is gone. So that really impacted me, and it impacted people across the nation, and it continues to impact people, especially those who was involved, who are still living. But the other ones that was close to those who died, like sons and daughters, who have become, whether they became a law enforcement officer or a firefighter, in place of their father or their mother who passed away in that horrific incident. And it's still a lot going on now as far as, you know, what goes on. Are we safer today? We have to stay alert. And that's one thing that took place when this incident took place. We end up heightening up security. We end up being more watchful for different things and stuff. Every year we will be watchful throughout different cities, whether we put out memos saying, hey, everybody be vigilant, pay attention. be alert, for different things, different people that may be around guns, weapons that may be on campuses or coming around the police department. Make sure you at high alert on this day or a day that's announced. So I feel like we're safe because we're on high alert, whether it's abroad or over here in the States. We're paying attention. We have, high security in areas that we didn't have before 9/11 came about. We have TSA at the airports. We have the cameras that's all over the place now that's watchful. And then they're also monitoring telephones and people computers and stuff to make sure that individuals are not plotting, as far as being some of these side groups or domestic terrorists that we have sometimes. So I believe we are safe than we was before because of all the heightened security, all the personnel that's been hired to put in place to monitor, to watch, and also to guide and direct different things. We brought in Homeland Security to deal with the different issues and to tackle dealing with direction and guidance on how we can tackle home security issues. So it was very important for us to do that. And just to change, we changed in national security infrastructure. We put things in place, like I said, it was the cameras and stuff that we have, airports. Now we have to watch out for our own domestic terrorists coming into grocery stores, coming into churches, where
Schools.
people try to worship, coming into the schools and stuff, whether they have guns, knives, or anything other, So we definitely are safer, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize at all times and be alert.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Major Cardona, your thoughts? Where were you? What do you think moving
It's
forward?
very vivid. You'll never forget where you were that day.
Yes.
I was at work. I was a detective in the domestic violence unit. And there was four of us, and we're sitting around a round table, and we're having breakfast and just kind of talking about, hey, what are we doing today? Who do you have, or do you have to go and search for a subject? Trying to coordinate what our day is going to look like. And the TV happens to be on, and we look up, and it's almost like an out-of-body experience. It's like, this isn't real. This is like a movie. Because that's exactly what it seemed like. It seemed like you're watching Die Hard,
Yes.
It was, I don't even have the words to describe what it felt like at that moment. I mean, tears, I'm not one to cry, but that day, tears formed because you're looking at people who are doing anything and everything possible to try and survive, jumping out of the building because they figured that I have a chance. If I jump out of a window, I'm going to have a chance.
Yes.
That was truly life-changing. At that moment, you kind of, you took things that you take for granted on a day-to-day basis. It kind of opened your eyes at that moment.
Sure.
And then from that point on, everything was like in fast forward because so many things did change. Before we were looking into gangs and narcotics trafficking, those were the things that we dealt with, especially from a local level. Now you have to worry about terrorism and what does that look like? Training, getting additional training, making sure that you know what to look for, like what looks like out of the norm. Now you have to, and it's not just you getting trained, making sure that the department as a whole is trained. You changed security measures for the police department and other local government buildings. Before, we were like an open house, 24 hours. Hey, come on in, and we're welcoming. Now, you were locking doors after a certain hour. Now, you couldn't just open the mail because domestic terrorism, they're sending anthrax. Things that from a local level, you never anticipated of having to deal with. Now, things changed very drastically. Back then, if you had someone that you were looking for, information was not being shared.
Yes.
A lot of things were getting lost. Then you had to, so they created, right, that infrastructure, like you mentioned, making sure that we're sharing information, that they're giving us information for fusion centers, emergency operations centers. Things were moving and moving quickly.
Yes.
As far as, are we safer today? Yes, we're safer today. But every day you can always do something better in making sure that you're trying to to predict, maybe, use that predicting policing as to what is coming next, and to try and be prepared for that and not get caught up with reacting.
Yes. Very good. Thank you both so much.
If I can,
Please, Chief.
and I think it comes with discipline. When we talk about law enforcement personnel being on high alert, when we talk about families, when we talk about wives and husbands and kids when they go out places and stuff, to be disciplined enough to be mindful of their surroundings, paying attention to who's doing what. I always tell my son when they go out with my daughter or my wife, and I tell them, I said, make sure you look out for everybody, keep your eyes moving, keep your heads on the swivel, because it's so important. You don't know who's standing in the crowd, just looking to do something out of the ordinary. So you have to always be on alert, whether you need to yell out something to say, hey, get down, or run, duck, or whatever the case may be, but you need to be mindful. And it's like with me, from a law enforcement perspective, I'm always looking around everywhere. I walk in a room, I might be at dinner with you right here, and you're going to see me looking all around, paying attention to everybody that comes in the door, And then a lot of officers will tell you they look for exits as soon as they come into a building, a restaurant, because they want to know where the outdoor is. So that is very important as far as, just being on high alert for times like this and things that's happening today, whether it's a gang shooting, that you might be around somebody who's being hunted by a group of people, and they just start shooting at everyone. So, and you might get caught up in that fire. So, just being mindful, just watching and looking out for things like that.
Excellent. Thank you both. Our primary audience, of course, our viewers are students who really want to follow in your footsteps.
Right.
What would you tell them in terms of what you both believe to be the most important areas or aspects that they can be bringing to the table? What talents, skills, and abilities would you be looking for if you're hiring as a chief, as a major? What's most important that you think today for our young people to be able to contribute?
So with me, I always tell young people you have to remember that you're already on a path already. And if your mindset and your heart is focused on what you want, like me, I wanted to be a police officer. My mind and my heart was focused on that. So everything I did was geared towards that, meaning that everything I did, read, or looked at, or spoke with, I spoke to officers out on the street. I didn't know them. I was a young man, but I knew what I wanted to do. So I kept thinking about it, kept talking about it. And eventually I ended up getting it, whether I prayed also about it, and things was given to me. But always keep yourself, in a square to where you always not practicing mentally, feeling it in your heart, but also, looking ahead, of where you need to be, what you need to do in life as far as, hey, I want to be a police officer. Okay, so you have to remember, have a good background, don't get yourself in any trouble. Don't hang around bad people. Don't use drugs. Don't mess up your finances, because those are the things that's going to be looked at, by police departments. They're looking at conduct. They're looking at your criminal background. They're looking at your financial situation. They're looking at previous crimes, whether you got arrested or not, depending on if it's felony or misdemeanor. If it's a misdemeanor, you're still going to be questionable on some agencies unless they really need officers or people to come in to be officers. So my thing is, make sure you always protect yourself at all times. And I'm talking about your background, and just keep your mind on the prize at all times. And you want to be a police officer, and that's what your mindset is set on, you're going to be a police officer. But you have to make sure that you practice what you need to do. Make sure you get your education, because they're going to also be looking for those credentials also, and they will help you along the way once you get in there.
Thank you, Chief. Major Cardona.
I think it's important to have a very good support network, regardless of what that may be.
Yes.
Whether it's friends, family, it doesn't need to be immediate family. It could be an extended family, other students. You form a family when you're here. You're around so many people, and you're working and dealing with people studying the same thing. So you need a good support group and a foundation, spiritual foundation. You need to be grounded.
Yes.
And have a passion for this. This is not something that is for everyone.
Yeah.
You're exposed to things that no other person should be exposed to. And this is on a daily basis.
Yes.
So now, I mean, back when I started, hey, suck it up. You were not allowed, you could not show emotion. So it kind of affected you personally as well, because you went into your personal relationships that same way. You were always guarded. You had to have that guard up in order to protect yourself so you can remain sane. Because what you see, what you're exposed to, I mean, what you watch on TV, it doesn't seem like it's real, but believe me, when it's there right in front of you where you can see, smell, touch, those are things you do not forget. And you take that with you, whether you realize it or not. So making sure that you have a good support system for your mental health, your physical health. A lot of people go into it and say, all I have to do is get through the academy. No, you need to take care of yourself physically, because heart attacks, high blood pressure, whether they're, genetic or not, you're going to get it. Because what's your outlet? Making sure that you have a family outside of law enforcement. You get so wrapped up when you're working in any field that your on time and off time, you're embedded in that. And that's not healthy. You need to make sure that you have close friends outside of what you're doing. So that way you stay grounded with, the reality of outside of what you're exposed to on a day-to-day basis. Because those images do not go away. So the wellness, health wellness, mental wellness is very important. And I am so happy that it has now come to the forefront and it's available. Before, you would not want to call your employee assistant a program, because you don't want anybody to know what you're experiencing. It was taboo. Don't cry. It's taboo. Suck it up. Oh, you're crying. Maybe you should be at home, in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant. This is not a job for you. Suck it up. Now, you're allowed to actually be human and have a way to speak to somebody professionally to help you through those moments. So yes, support system, you need it in order to make it through this field.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Appreciate your sincerity and your honesty so that our students are aware of what they're getting into. I'm a criminologist, and I've had the honor and privilege of serving at 3 colleges and universities in my career, Miami-Dade College, FIU, and STU. And I'm always, of course, personally and professionally mindful of crime. But for both of you, what crimes do you think you're most concerned about, given your professional backgrounds and involvement and contributions? So in other words, is it murder, rape, robbery, or even in your own minds and perspective, have the crime shifted to a different level of concern for both of you and for society?
I would look at murders back, like in the 90s, we had a lot of murders going on in North Miami, where we had the gangs, and they was going back and forth, and these was young guys killing each other back and forth. And then I also had the opportunity of having a student when I was a school resource officer, having one of the students to ask me if it's okay for him to get a gun. Which I asked him, I said, why? He said, because I'm having problems with my stepdad. I said, no, you don't need a gun. But one day that kid didn't come to school, and the principal sent me around to check on him. So while I'm at the house looking through the windows, I see some little blood splatter here and there. And then I see some leakage coming out of the garage door and everything. So I figured there was some bodies in there. So we end up bringing out our public works department, opening up their garage and digging their bodies out of a vault that the stepdad had chopped them, hit them in the head, and also, buried them inside this crypt. And that ended up being, and put them in sand, and he bleached them. So when their bodies came out, they was all, pale and everything. But that was a tremendous, a terrible moment at that time. That would be something that I would never forget.
Yes.
And there's other things that, being a police officer that we get to see, and those things are happening right now while we may be here talking on this podcast. where somebody's probably locked in the closet, locked in the basement, in the cage, chained up, or whatever the case may be, or getting killed right now. So a lot of those crimes, yeah, as far as robbery, we have parents, going through some PTSD moment to where they're killing their young, and then killing themselves and stuff. So that was an experience for me when I was up in Lauderhill, where a lady took both of her girls into the lake and drowned both of them, and they ended up dead. So yeah, so crimes like that, they really bother me, and it's a life changer. It makes you open your eyes to certain things and not take things for granted, because at any given moment, any of us, can sometime or some way, some shape, to lose our mind and go into another different direction to where we don't have that control, or we might have that control but don't know how to stop it. So I believe those things, looking at those things, those crimes, they have changed my mindset on certain things and making me aware of what I need to pay attention to more often. When Ann talk about mental health, everywhere we work, we have to look out for those people. When I speak to people, I always tell them, I say, hey, check on your neighbor. I don't care if it's your coworker. Pat them on the shoulder. You never know who had a bad day at home, and now they come to work.
Yes.
And we have experience with one of our coworkers, work midnight shift, and this guy looked like nothing bothered him or anything. He come to work normal, looked normal, but one day he went home, got off from work, went home and shot himself in the head. So those are moments that you think about and you think, God, for what you have and the way you have it and stuff, if it's not in a bad place.
Thank you, Chief, for sharing. Major Cardona.
I would say being on campus, right? So the first thing that pops to mind is active shooter scenarios. And you want to try and be as prepared as you possibly can and prevent if possible, because you don't want to have to experience that, and you definitely don't want your students to experience that, that trauma. And another thing, particularly now, again, from being on campus, domestic violence issues, dating issues. A lot of students think that it's a norm to be spoken to in a certain way, to be treated a certain way, that, oh, okay, that's okay. It's not okay. And sometimes they think, let me not say anything. Oh, I can take care of it myself. Or they're afraid to say something because they don't want their parents to know about it. Yet they're young adults. And we've all experienced stuff in our lives. But at the end of the day, we all deserve to be respected, particularly by someone who you're sharing your life with, right?
Yeah.
Someone who, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever the situation is. And in law enforcement, I experienced it as a law enforcement administrator, but it's embarrassing. So you try and talk to someone who you can express yourself to, but make sure it doesn't come, you don't bring it to work, because you're there to help others around you and to make sure that they're not experiencing it. So here at the school, coming across some of the reports that we get, it's very prevalent, and it's, one would think that after the O.J. Simpson, that it came to light and everybody was, domestic violence, and now it seems like it's down at a lull. They're like comfortable now, and we can't afford to get comfortable, because the increase in homicides that are domestic related, they are increasing. It's not decreasing.
Correct.
And now it's not just the partner killing the other partner. Now it's like, oh, if I can't have you, I'm going to take you and the kids. And it's trickling down, and it's affecting more than just two people. So it's very important that the students today, if they're experiencing any of those things, please, we here at STU, we have a health and wellness center that you can go and speak to somebody with. Tim and myself, we're always available at the public office in Building 9 to talk to, but please reach out to someone, because it is not normal.
No. Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, we are out of time. This has been an amazing first show. We couldn't have asked for better guests. And thank you so much to Chief Belcher, to Major Cardona, and we will look forward to joining you next time on Crime Time with Dr. Debbie. Thank you.